guys, I am here again, joined by the TheRumHam of Twitch fame. TheRumHam, what's going on, man?
Great, Clash. Ash, we had such a great time last time doing this that I'm really excited to discuss these balance changes with you again.
Yeah, man, I think we should make it a regular thing because it's so much fun to talk about the balance changes, and to talk with pretty much the most knowledgeable guy about the game. I think people really enjoyed that. So what do you say? You want to hop right into the new balance changes coming on 7/4 is the date they should be live in-game.
This is July 4th, man. This is America's birthday, and we got a really weird set of changes. They're awesome. We're going to go through them. I think there's a lot of surprises in here. There was a lot of unexpected changes that I don't think either of us saw coming.
Absolutely. And to be honest with you, I read this first change, and honest to God, I really thought it was a troll. I really thought the skeleton army, the skeleton count increased to 21 from 20. Obviously, that one skeleton that was Skeleton's last nerf was added onto the skeleton army. I thought it was a joke at first when the community manager shared it to us before it went live in game. I was like, oh my God, is this real? And it is, I guess. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's worth noting that we're looking at the live build right now, that Ledoute is the name of the 21st skeleton. It is
yeah, he has a name. It is worth noting. I saw they named a few of those guys.
So actually, this change makes sense to me from a balancing standpoint. When they first launched, one elixir bought you 4 skeletons. So for 4 elixir, you got 20 skeletons. You got 5 skeleton cards for the cost of 4. And on paper, that kind of made sense. But in practice, Skeleton Army's always been a really underpowered card. Mm-hmm. There's just too many good counters for it. With skeletons down to 3 for the cost of 1, making this up to 21 now makes it 7 skeleton cards for the cost of 4. I think it just makes the math a little cleaner. I don't know how much of a difference this is going to make, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it's always, even if it was 25, I think it's always going to run to that same issue where a Zap can take it out, and it's an awful elixir trade. Everybody's running Zap. Everybody's running at least Zap or Arrows, or Princess. I mean, there's 3, Zap, Arrows, Princess. 3 things right off the bat are an easy one-shot counter to Skeleton Army, so it's difficult to play it.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where like a single Valkyrie or Witch completely negates it whether or not there's 1s or 2. One thing that would even make it better is that it summons skeletons at the level of the epic, not levels above it. So for example, level 7 skeleton army makes level 7 skeletons, not level 12 skeletons. Mm-hmm. So that allows things like Ice Wizard to one-hit it. So even Ice Wizard's going to clean up skeleton army.
Yeah, that's scary. That's scary. I didn't even realize that. That's another thing that maybe could be done, although it still wouldn't really change a lot of the one-shots, but it would give them another boost, another little buff. But
it would vastly increase the DPS of the card for the short period of time that it's around, right? Because right now, you drop it, people just zap it in a few seconds, maybe 2 seconds after you've played it. Well, if it does more damage during those 2 seconds, it might be worth it, kind of in the way that Minion Horde is worth it, even if they arrow it on defense.
Exactly.
You still get a lot of value out of it.
Yeah, if you drop a skeleton army on a golem or a prince, for example, it should, it would have that ability to quickly take it down, in 1 or 2 seconds, like you mentioned. So, but maybe that would be the answer. But I don't see myself using too much skeleton army. Maybe I'll try it out, but I don't think this one skeleton, what is his name? Ledoute. I don't think Ledoute's going to be enough for me, but we'll have to wait and see. But moving on to the next balance upcoming change, this one I think it might be the all-star role in this balance changes, and it's the Goblin Barrel. The elixir cost decreased to 3 from 4, and the deploy time increased to 1.2 seconds from 1 second, and it removed impact damage. So basically, like a whole revamping of the Goblin Barrel. Yeah. What are your thoughts?
I am both excited and afraid of this change. This is a huge power increase for Goblin Barrel. Goblin Barrel was arguably one of the worst cards in the game because it was so easy to counter the 4 elixir attack for less than 4 elixir. But if it ever worked, and if you even did something like all play spear goblins or archers to kill your goblins, those goblins still did hundreds of damage before you killed them. Mm-hmm. Now, Goblin Barrel is arguably more of a threat than Miner to a tower. So, in one hand, it's really good, right? Because now there's an epic version of Miner. There's a card that for people who are like, oh, I don't have Miner, how do I play Miner decks? It's like, well, you can try Goblin Barrel in that spot.
True.
for minor decks, they get another tool, which is cool. But this might be a really powerful card. How do you stop Goblin Barrel from just doing like 300 damage every time they cast it?
I mean, well, the upside is, in countering, is you do have that extra 0.2 seconds, the Goblin deploy time. So you can see it coming a little bit more clearly, although you already had plenty of time as is. So kind of if you had the zap or the arrows, you already had it coming, you know? But,
well, that's a reversion of the last patch's buff to Goblin Barrel. So basically, Goblin Barrel is going to be the same as you've known it the entire lifespan, with the exception of the last 2 weeks where I guess it was a little quicker and it didn't really change its play or power or anything.
Yeah, so this might be the team saying, you know what, that wasn't a great buff. Here's what we'll do. We'll put it back to the way it was, and we'll have a huge elixir cost decrease, 25% from 4 to 3. So, yeah, I mean, I think the Goblin Barrel...
damage is practically nothing. Like, that was 30 damage. That's not what you were paying for. Goblin Barrel essentially just got 25% cheaper with no trade-off. That's huge, right? That's a big deal.
Yeah, I think Goblin Barrel might be the witch of this balance change. I think you might see it go from barely any usage to a moderate usage, which would be make a lot of people happy, because as you said, Goblin Barrel now, I could see it, like you pointed out, I could see it being that alternative option to the miner for people who don't have it. So that's cool. It's a cool card. I'm excited to see what happens with it.
Yeah, Arrow Overload is definitely going to come back as like a deck archetype. I think just in time for tournaments too. This should be going live the same day as the tournaments patch, right? Like,
yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, so that like day one of tournaments, there's a whole new archetype that a lot of people are not familiar with.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving on, another card that I haven't thought about in a while. I've never been a huge Giant Skeleton user, to be honest with you. I think have you used it a lot?
You know, there was a period in time where I really liked the card and used it a lot in one of my main decks, but I haven't used it much recently, and I've never really seen it as a very competitive tournament card.
Yeah, damage increased by 20%. It doesn't affect the death damage though. No bomb damage buff. But do you think the 20% is going to be enough to see it, you know, viable in more competitive tournament like areas?
So let's, I'm looking at max level. So
yeah.
If I'm looking at a max level Giant Skeleton, it's like a little over 200 damage, like 205 or something like that, 203. So another 20% puts it up to like 220 something. Well, what is that relevant against? Like, what was it one hitting before that it's now gonna, or what was it two hitting before that it'll now one hit?
I was thinking the same
Goblins
thing.
fall into that. No, they don't.
No, I was thinking about the same question, and I didn't take a look, but I could only imagine that it was something, but you're telling me no.
It's not Goblin. Goblins are going to have, I mean, this is again max level, but it's the same at tournament level, so this will be relevant either way. But Goblins at max are 247 hit points, and it looks like a max level Giant Skeleton's only going to do about 220, 230. So he'll still two-hit Goblins, which I thought was the point of this. Already one-hits Spear Goblins and like smaller things like Skeletons. So I'm not exactly sure what's going to happen, like what the point of this buff is.
Yeah, I mean, its damage will be a little bit closer to on par with, like, a Giant, it looks like, right? Not quite as much, but, I mean, if you can get it to a tower, it looks like it will actually be doing a little bit of damage versus, you know, for me, the thing with Giant Skeletons is similar to P.E.K.K.A.s, but not as, not as extreme, but they're just so easy to distract. They're so slow moving. You have to distract them. You have to keep them away from your tower as is. That I'm not sure. I mean, the best thing about them, in my opinion, is that death damage, because you can actually use them on defense as well, you know?
I might be totally wrong here. I'm sorry. We just did our math wrong.
Okay.
20% on 200 is 240, not 220. So actually, it might one-hit Goblins, or it might fall like literally a few DPS short. Like, it's going to be really close. So if that's true, I think that's a great change. If Giant Skeleton one-hits Goblins, that changes the main counters that you have to deal with that card.
Absolutely, yeah. You can't invest in the Giant Skeleton and then have a 2 elixir Goblin take it down and distract it. So definitely will be interesting to see what happens to the Giant Skeleton. I'm definitely going to try him out in a few decks to see where he fits in, if he does have a role now in the game, but hopefully he will, because it's one of those cards I haven't played too often there. Moving on to Dark Prince, damage increased by 8%. It's kind of the same type of buff. I think the Prince got a 9%, I believe, 2 weeks ago. So the Dark Prince now seeing that same damage increase. I love the Dark Prince as is. I think I love him even more. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of Dark Prince. Well, I take it back. Ooh. I love the theme of Dark Prince as is. I think it's
going
cool,
down
he's
on
fast. I love the charge. Pardon?
No. I would say we're Dark Prince enemies here. I'm a big fan.
Yeah, like I think thematically he's really cool, but
Yep.
I agree with most people. Every time I play him, he feels sort of fragile, and I go, man, I wish I had a Valkyrie. Now, this could be a function of epics being under-leveled or what, but I do like that now there's a clear differentiation between them. Dark Prince is going to do significantly more damage, I think, and be faster, but be more fragile in exchange, and I think that seems like a good trade-off.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the Dark Prince now, another one of those damage increased by 8%. What exactly does that mean, in real game scenarios? And it's hard to do the math on everything, but I imagine this might, given the team puts so much thought behind these numbers, I think that might affect the number of hits he can do on a Barbarian pack, for example. Barbarian's probably the most popular counter in the game.
Sure.
Right now, so it might have a significant effect on something like that. So we'll have to see again, but I think Dark Prince, especially the PvP decks, I think again giving another boost to those type of power decks.
Yeah, I think you're probably right that there's going to be some big card, like one of two things is either going to be true now. Dark Prince is going to 3-hit barbs where he used to 4-hit them or something.
Yeah.
And I think he may be able, when charging, to kill some smaller troops. So his area damage is going to go up to this is again max level, so 260 something, 270 something. So doubling that may one hit something small like Bomber or I don't know, small towers that he used to not kill as quickly. So I think there's going to be room for Dark Prince. That's another card that I think we're just going to see a lot of when tournaments come into the game, because a lot of people have him at level 4, but not at level 5, 6, etc. that you would need to keep him up with your commons.
Yeah,
as you level up further into the game.
Yeah, that's a good point there. And you mentioned Bomber. That's another card getting an increased damage increased by 9%. So I think that's a pretty big one. I think Bomber trying to get another boost. I mean, they're already at such a disadvantage where they can't handle any air troops. So that's why people are just really don't opt to bring Bomber that often. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, Bomber's not a terrible card. There's times that you see it being played. I just always feel like that when it comes down to it, you can find something else to spend your 3 elixir on. This is a pretty massive buff after a massive buff just went in kind of recently. Looking at max levels, the Bomber's going to start doing around 375 damage a throw. That's a lot. You know what I mean? That's a pretty significant amount of damage output. I don't know at what point it becomes a ranged mini P.E.K.K.A., but there is an amount of damage that they can add to it. At some point, it does so much damage you can't ignore it.
Yeah, you see Supercell just inching in the direction of these underused cards. Okay, how much damage do we have to increase by to make people actually use them a lot? And I'm kind of in the same boat as you. Whenever I've used the Bomber in any of my decks, a lot of times I did try in the last couple weeks putting the Bomber in a Royal Giant deck, and I liked it when it worked. But then there's so many times, as you mentioned, that you're like, okay, I need, you go against one of those balloon giant decks or something, and you just need those air cards. You need the princess, you need even archers, anything. Spirit goblins, anything. Sometimes you can just find a better fit for those type of cards. So I like the idea. Let's see if we can add them. If they can do a lot of damage as is. I mean, if you get a Bomber on a tower, it's going down. I mean, it does a lot of sneaky damage to towers.
And I like that Bomber is vulnerable to Fireball and Poison, so because there's always natural counters sort of built into the card, they can push it a little bit, right? They could, I like that it's short range, but they could increase the damage, kind of significantly, and if it's too much, you can always dial it back, or at least if it ever becomes too powerful, you can always Fireball it like you do Princess, right? Which is another really powerful 3-cost range attacker.
For sure. So, yeah, Bomber, another interesting buff here. And moving on to Wizard, attack speed increased to 1.6 seconds from 1.7 seconds. Seems a little bit, very, very small, but maybe significant. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I mean, we definitely underestimated when Tesla had its attack speed increase. That was actually a huge nerf. So in that same line of thinking, Witch getting an attack speed increase could be really good, right? This DPS could go up a little bit, but overall, I don't know. I think this may not be the last buff that Wizard gets. I think Witch is in a good spot right now, but the downside is that Witch really outclasses Wizard in a lot of ways currently. Yeah. So I think this is Supercell trying to tweak it, but I'm not exactly sure what the final result's gonna end up being.
Yeah, Wizard is a tough one to, as a tough card to buff, I'd imagine. Besides the speed increase, which they're doing here, damage increase can be, even a 5% damage increase can really affect can really dramatically affect its usage. I'll have to see. I haven't been using a lot of Wizard at all, and obviously that's part of the reason why they're bringing the buff. I'm sure the usage rates have gone down. I remember seeing Wizard all the time, it seemed like, when the game first took off.
Right. Now well, it used to be, it's like way more. Do you remember that they actually did a 9% damage nerf to Wizard a while back?
Oh, okay. I totally forgot about that. So that's...
They used to do like however much more. So I just did the math on the attack speed increase. It's about a 5% DPS buff to it. So it does 195 DPS at max level. After the buff, it'll do 208. Okay. So that's,
Yeah, I mean,
that's significant.
It's noteworthy. We'll have to see, I guess. I'm trying to see what the Ice Wizard attack rate is right now. So Ice Wizard is 1.5, so a little bit faster.
Okay.
Interesting.
So, yeah, I think they could even push it down a little more. The thing is about... Okay, so I watch a lot of tournaments, and in my opinion, Ice Wizard is probably a little too good at tournaments. He feels just like too strong, too powerful, too whatever. Yeah. Now, I like making the other options... like Bomber, Archers, etc., take advantage of Ice Wizard's weakness. He doesn't do a lot of damage. So you can really push the damage on the other cards to make it more of a choice, and I think that's what they're trying to do with Wizard. Like, how much damage can we have Wizard put out to make you actually want to upgrade your Ice Wizard to Fire Wizard?
Agreed. Yeah, I totally agree, because Ice Wizard is one of those cards that, whenever you're starting out a match and your opponent plays an Ice Wizard, you're like, ah, crap. I'm going to be dealing with this the entire match. It's a frustrating card to go against, and I agree. The usage of people who actually have Ice Wizard, it must be pretty high in a lot of decks. So we'll have to see if Wizard can actually...
Going with tournaments, too. Like, how many people are level 10 or level 11, but with a level 1 Ice Wizard, the Ice Wizard feels weaker, right?
Yeah. Tournaments, yeah, for sure. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. Inferno Tower, another buff here. Hit points increased by 6%. Notably, this update, by the way, I think everything is a buff. Except, yeah, pretty much everything's a buff. So interesting there. Nothing nerfed this update. So.
I think you could argue the Elixir Collector change is a nerf, but I agree. Like that's more of a middle one.
That's true. I mean, it's kind of, you're right. We'll move on to that in a second. Inferno Tower hit points increased by 6%. You're starting to see, at least I'm starting to see. I don't know about you in the Super Magical Cup tournament or any of your other tournaments. Are you starting to see a little bit more Inferno Tower action lately?
Actually, yeah. Like I really like the last Cannon nerf and Tesla buff. It feels like there's a place for every defensive tower in the game. Like there's an actual decision about spending 3 on a Cannon, 5 on an Inferno, or 4 on a Tesla, which is good. That's what you want, right? Yeah. I think what's notable about this change is that starting with this update, Zap is going to reset Inferno's damage every time it happens. So right now, if you zap an Inferno Tower and it retargets, it starts its damage over again. It cools down and has to warm back up. But if it relocks on the same target, it stays warm and kills that person, just like goes right back to burning them down. Yeah. So with this update, Zap is going to make it reset all the way back down to 0, even if it locks on the same target. And I think this hit point increase is a trade-off for that mechanic being brought into the game.
Agreed 100%. I was going to mention that too, that a lot of people haven't heard much about that. I'm not sure if they posted it on the forums or on their blog.
It was on Reddit at least.
Oh, okay, on Reddit, yeah. But yeah, the Inferno Tower, I think that is going to be a pretty decent, small little sneaky nerf there. So I agree. The hit point increase should offset that enough. And I've been going against Inferno Towers, like I kind of alluded to. I've been going against them pretty, in the last 2 weeks. I would say I've gone up, maybe a half dozen Inferno Tower decks, and I haven't seen any previous to that in Legendary Arenas. So maybe this will keep things going, especially now that Zap is, with a skeleton army and the Goblin Barrel and everything else. I think Zap's going to be like, absolutely not mandatory, but either Zap or arrows for sure.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of worried about Goblin Barrel for that reason. Zap is already one of the most played spells, and that it makes it seem... I hope that there's going to be new cards in the new update. I hope that at least one of them is like an alternative to Zap, like a 1 to 3 cost spell that or a unit that sort of does a Zap thing or something like that, where if I don't feel like I have to play Zap in every deck, I can play this other card instead.
Yeah. It will be cool to see, because I don't think they've added any spells to poison. They've added poison. So, but other than that, I don't think anything. So it'll be cool to see if they add something like that. I like that, these balance changes and the new cards. I like that Clash Royale always brings us new content on a frequent basis because, like we talked about in the last episode, like everything always feels fresh and new, and you have to relearn the game. And I really actually like that a lot.
Me too. No, I can't wait for. I think bring on the new cards, bring on new, legendaries,
even
epics,
if you don't
rares,
like everything,
commons, whatever.
Yeah. But well, now let's talk about the Elixir Collector because we alluded to it a second ago. Now it's affected by slowing and speed up effects. So everything basically, poison, freeze, zap, rage, ice wizard, can affect the Elixir Collector's elixir production. So explain to us, what does that mean?
Okay. So Elixir Collector has been one of the most popular cards in the game since beta, since forever, right? Mm-hmm. And no matter they've nerfed the hit points a whole bunch, and I think they've got the hit points down to a good spot. It feels fragile, but it's still incredibly popular. And if you put your Elixir Collector in the back row, there's like not anything most people can do about it, so it remains a very popular card. I think this is a good nerf because what it does is it makes Elixir Collector behave the way you would expect it to behave. It behaves like every other tower, building, whatever, everything in the game by being affected by the slow and speed up effects. Now, in terms of like actual matchups, Poison becomes the best card ever against Elixir Collector. If nothing else, the slow effect means that Poison's damage plus the slow will take at least 5 pumps off the card, and it might even go up to something like 6 if they have a 1 level lower collector than your Poison or something like that, or if you catch them at the right time or whatever, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so basically 1 poison pretty much negates the entire value of an Elixir Collector, if I'm doing the math right.
It's a lot. Like, it may bring it down to a 4 for 4, where you get 1 pump, but it takes 6 pumps off or something like that. The only catch is that you have to cast it early. Because Poison has a 10-second damage thing, and you want all 10 seconds to slow, if you wait 10, 15 seconds and then cast Poison, they may get a lot more value out of it. But if you immediately answer a Collector with a Poison, I'm pretty sure that's a good trade for you at this point, which was not always true before. It was kind of situational. Same thing's true with like Freeze, Ice Wizard, Zap. Zap already took off 2 pumps worth of cards. Or 2 pumps worth of damage. It may take off 3 now. I'm not really sure, right? There's a lot of close
yeah, it's another one of those things. It's hard to say until you actually see it in game. But a lot of people are not a lot of people, but some people I've come across are confused about the Elixir Collector as is. When you upgrade it, obviously it's staying on the battlefield the same amount of time. No matter what, it's just the hit points that are affected. So these speed up and slow down effects are strictly affecting the production of the elixir, not the hit points.
Correct. So the hit point degrade will stay at the same rate of 70 seconds over 1484, whatever that is. But imagine it has like a 1 minute, 10-second attack swing. So what's really cool is if you rage it, for example, and rage lasts let's actually look at this, because I think there is an upside to this. Rage gets a new use. Rage is a card that's always sort of looking for more applications. It doesn't do enough right now in the game. 11 seconds, or I guess, 12 seconds if I would upgrade it one more time. So a maxed out rage, 12 seconds at a 40% boost, I believe turns that collection time from 10 seconds to 6 seconds, which means that during the 12 seconds you get at least 2 pumps. I think raging 2 collectors makes a profit.
Yeah, and it sounds kind of crazy, like, okay, RumHam, are people really going to sit there and rage 2 collectors? But think about it. Especially maybe you're on defense, even 1 Elixir Collector, maybe you really need a big defense. You can use that rage on your defending troops and your Elixir Collector, and then maybe you can actually see a profit somewhere in there where you can have a huge counter push with that boosted Elixir Collector, and maybe a savvy player could actually make some usage out of the rage defense / Elixir Collector combo. Yeah,
I can see a world, because rage is a really big radius. I can see a world where you have your 2 collectors inside next to your king tower, not in the far opposite corners, but like touching towards the middle, and then either a 3rd collector in the middle or a spawner hut. And then if you drop rage, not only I think you're making 4 elixir for 3 elixir, but you're getting more spawns out of your spawner, and if it hits like a defensive tower as well, or like a crown tower, that's some value, right?
Yeah, maybe we will see rage used a little bit more, because right now, the only time people use Rage to me are like those, the Three Musketeer decks or something like that. And there's a lot of, positive and negative there. You can, if they have like a fireball, you're ruined, but now maybe we'll see, just maybe we'll see a little bit more Rage in the game. So hopefully it'll be interesting to see the new Elixir Collector, if people start dropping it or if people continue to use it, because every time they've tried to make any changes to Elixir Collector, people just keep pulling through and still using them. They still remain just as popular as they used to be. At least that's what it seems like to me.
I would agree, but I have been feeling the nerfs. Like, I do think, like, for example, all the hit point nerfs introduced the idea that you could fireball a collector for value, and now that's true, and that's good. So I like this is introducing more counterplay to it, more ways to negate the power of Elixir Collector. And really, the biggest Elixir Collector nerf that came out in this patch is the Goblin Barrel buff, because now a lot more people have a miner of their own to start throwing at people's collectors, and you're faced with, like, either spend your zap or arrows or lose your collector, and either one of those is a bad situation to be in.
Exactly. Yeah, good point for sure. A lot of these things like have will definitely affect each other, these balancing changes, when you look at them all as a whole. The second to last one here, Tombstone hit points increased by 9%. Tombstone getting another buff here, just trying to push it into relevance here. What do you think, Tombstone? Like it?
Yeah, it's actually not much hit points in the big scheme of things. Like a max level Tombstone has 560 hit points, so even, 10% on that is like 600 hit points instead of 560. It's not a huge amount, right? So, but I think this may be the difference between like 2 hog swings and 3 hog swings or something weird like that.
Yep.
That may allow the card to be a little more versatile on defense. Interestingly enough, the second place finisher at the Super Magical Cup Invitational played Tombstone in one of his decks to great effect. Its mechanics actually work really well against a lot of popular cards.
Yeah, interesting. I haven't tried it in forever, it seems like. But you know what? Way back, maybe, 2 or 3 months ago, a lot of people were using it then to stop Hog Riders in those cycle decks when the whole landscape of the game seemed a lot different back then. It's hard to even remember exactly how they were so successful, other than the fact that obviously the Skeletons took down the Hog Riders, but then people just switched over to, the Cannon and it moved from there. But Tombstone kind of got left in the dust, so it will be interesting to see if people start putting that Tombstone back in their decks, especially against the Hog Rider decks in tournaments type situations.
Yeah, like, just things to look out for. I don't know if any of these things will end up being true in competitive play, but things that Tombstone can do very well is distract mortars and princesses. Like, Princess just locks on to the spawn skeleton over and over again and never actually hits the Tombstone, so it's a good way to buy time against a princess. It's good against P.E.K.K.A.s and other, like, big, slow, doofy things.
Giant skeletons now as well.
Yeah, giant skeletons. It's actually not terrible against Lava Hound. Like, obviously, it's not that many hit points, so the Lava Hound will kill it quickly, but it's a good way to sort of buy time and cause whatever's behind the Lava Hound to sort of get distracted on the skeletons and the spawn stuff. So, like, it's not the worst thing ever. It's great against mini P.E.K.K.A. as well. Like, it's a hard counter to mini P.E.K.K.A. that survives and then keeps making skeletons afterwards.
Yeah, for all those reasons you mentioned, I think we could see some more usage of Tombstone. It'll be cool to see. I mean, like you said, I'm actually impressed that somebody finished second place using it in your tournament there. So, pretty cool. And the last one on the list is Bomb Tower. Hit points increased by 6%. Bomb Tower seems to be getting nerf buff, nerf buff, nerf buff. What do you think? I like Bomb Tower at lower level leagues. I still don't mind it. What do you think?
Yeah, Bomb Tower is one of those cards that feels great at Arena 5 and 6, and just kind of falls off as you get higher into the arenas. I think that this buff is going to be taken very surprised. Like, it's going to catch a lot of people by surprise, because if you're in Arena 5, you're like, what? Buff that card? That's one of the toughest cards to deal with. But I think it'll help in tournaments. I don't really know what it's trying to stop. Like, I guess it's a little bit better against Hog Riders and Royal Giants and stuff like that, but I feel like Bomb Tower has more of a matchup problem, because what do you like against those Valkyrie Hog decks, what are you really Bomb Towering?
Yeah, exactly. Even if you're going against a minor Hog deck, if you're going against a Royal Giant deck, if you look at like the current high-end game meta, I don't see why the Bomb Tower would offer a better defensive option than an Inferno Tower /Cannon/Tesla. But who knows? I think I'm glad they're buffing it, because it gives us an opportunity to think about it now. more often, but
Sure.
I'm not sure if it will ever present, against the current meta, a better option than what we have out there in those other defensive units.
And
but we'll see.
maybe there's new cards that
Ooh.
Bomb Tower needs to keep in check, right? There could be like a squad of horse riders or something. There's like 4 of them or something. They're really good.
The mini princes.
Yeah, mini princes. Yeah,
the stable spawner deck. I think they do want to bring back spawners. Both of these last balance changes. It's not quite there yet, but maybe this will be the counter to that new card that makes spawners a viable option. So
good news for Bomb Tower is that because it has so many hit points, a relatively modest buff like 6% actually ends up being a lot of hit points. Like it's like a couple hundred hit points. So that's pretty significant.
Yeah, for sure. So it will be interesting, but that pretty much wraps up the balance changes coming the 4th of July, like you mentioned. So, wow, there wasn't too many, but we did a good half an hour talking about them. So I hope everybody enjoys this format. I love talking to you, RumHam. Like I said, 5 times now. You're probably one of the most knowledgeable guys out in the game, so I hope everybody appreciates you and everything you do for the community, and giving your expert opinion on what these balance changes will bring to the game in terms of strategy changes and whatnot. Thanks for doing this, man.
Yeah, and thanks for coming on, my channel and talking with me as well. I really appreciate it. If you're just watching on my YouTube or whatever, definitely go follow Clash with Ash on YouTube. Hit the subscribe button below this, wherever you're looking at it.
Yeah. I should mention that too. This is the other one you didn't put on your channel, but this one is going to go on both YouTube channels, and I'll be sure to obviously link yours in the description below, and people know how to get in touch with you. But I'll include obviously all your social media and your Twitch as well. Be sure to check him out. He's one of the best streamers out there. For my money, the best. So guys, check him out, and thanks for doing this, man, again.
And same deal. I'm really excited to look forward to your sneak preview videos or whatever. I know you've always got the inside hookup with new info, so whatever you've got coming forward to the next update, I'm really excited to see it.
Yeah, man, looking forward to it. So thanks for coming on. Take care, man.
See you around.